Emmet, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Delighted to be here, Frank.
The last time we chatted at the very end, I asked you for a top tip on stocks and shares, and you recommended Tesla. That was your favorite stock at the time. And at the time, that share price was December 2017, and it was around between 60 and 70 dollars, I think. And obviously the share price is 10 times that now. So for anybody who did tune in, the rare, very, very lucky few, and did follow your advice, they would have created some wealth for themselves.
Good.
Which is pretty amazing. And I'm going to be asking you about that today.
Bye, Frankie. Frank, come on, man.
These shorter podcasts are all about our people's passions and interests. And yours happens to be investing in stocks and shares. How the hell did that begin?
Well, it was facilitated by the birth of the internet, or at least the birth of the internet into my life, where suddenly from your desktop, you could be exposed to different industries and people talking about industries and rising trends and the world changing in front of us. So I guess it really began by participating in a community that slowly I got more and more involved in. And that community were people who were looking to change their situation, their family fortunes by investing in the stock market. I mean, when you think about it, there are only a couple of ways in which you can actually generate true wealth, or at least get rich. And that's either you're born lucky into a home where there's a lot of money flying around, you win something in the lotto or a big prize, through some kind of inheritance, being uniquely good at something that has a high demand and can carry with it, a big salary, like being a brain surgeon. And then the one thing open to every person is stock investing. So I got invested in investing through conversations with my dad, through conversations with others, but most of all because I kind of it just caught my interest. And I think I said to you in our last podcast, Frank, how the story of Dell was one that absolutely captivated me. And I think that one single stock is the one that I can most thank for, the life that I've led. So for example, specifically, it came to my attention in the year 1999 that had I bought shares in Dell 10 years prior, I'd be up 1,600 fold, not percent, but 1,600 fold. So every $1,000 invested in Dell shares on the first day of 1990 and held until December 31st, 1999, turned into $1.6 million. So really what this was a revelation to me. It was like a door opening that this mechanism, which is available to anybody, can totally change your fortunes if you get it right. And it was that if you get it right mentality that I totally got addicted to. And that began with me saying, well, what did Dell have in 1990 that I could have spotted? And what companies today have those attributes that Dell had 10 years prior? And I effectively I have spent my entire life obsessing on that as a pursuit. What are the Dell attributes of businesses? And like anything, the more I practiced, the better I got. And I suppose when I spoke to you about Tesla a few years ago, it effectively had all the attributes that Dell had way back in 1990, which is a passionate founding CEO who's charismatic and known and part of the brand and has a large and meaningful stake in the business, with sales growing at a rapid rate. And, there's a shopping list of attributes that I have now refined down. And actually, I shouldn't even make it about me. It's not about that. My Wall Street has refined. It started with me, but the business I co-founded, has refined this process down. And as a consequence, the stocks we pick are smashing the average returns, absolutely destroying them. So my colleagues and I and our systems that we've developed has resulted in a method of investing that, when given enough time, works.
It was 1999, but that would have been, I suppose you would have been what, to 20?
I was 25, so I was
25,
born I was born at the end of 1974, and yeah, I wasn't just pure stock geek. I was like you. I wasn't listening to the Smiths, but I was listening to a lot of music, Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, and most of all Queen and Steely Dan and Metallica, and in fact the books that sit over my shoulder, for the most part, are connected to my other passion, which is guitar. And had I not tried to make a living out of stock expertise, I'd probably be trying to make a living playing the guitar at a virtuoso level. So in fact, and even though I have the home library behind me, virtually all my stock books are upstairs. So this backdrop here, I very often gesture like all these books I've read on investing, but in fact, all these ones right here are on electric guitar. So I like you had other passions. Of course, I wasn't just locked away, under the stairs reading books and stock investing. And that's the beauty of stock investing. It can run in parallel to your passions and your career and your life. So I was running a different career, as you know. It just so happened that this passion got so big and so all-consuming of my thought process that I would have been lying to myself had I just kept grinding on in this other profession, because I was fortunate enough to have the personality where I get intensely behind my own passions, and one of them was one that was commercially applicable, and you can make money by pursuing.
But I now if I was to go right back, I remember sitting and talking to you, and I can kind of remember that in a way it was you were sharing at the time. I think you had a bull sense on the web, and you used to share the stock recommendations, but it was very much in a kind of a sharing. This is amazing. If you're patient and if you can find the right stocks and sit with them, you gave a lot of information away for free. I know you gave away you did 1-day courses, but that was the impression I got, that this was something that you really loved. You felt everybody should know about it because it was a way to make money, and if you were patient. And that's what I got. That's the kind of thing? Is that true? It was kind of like, this is amazing, you need to hear about this sort of
completely
thing.
That is it in a nutshell. I mean, Frank, you and I live in a country where the word investment has historically been hardwired to property. So when we grew up, the very few people that we would have known who invested would have been buying land or buildings, usually houses. And then I suppose in the 90s, there was a new generation of wealth. Certainly in the second half of the 90s, there was a new generation of wealth, and people were buying investment properties. Whether they were doing it in Ireland or abroad, didn't matter. The conversation was about property. And this to me was completely incongruous with common sense, because you need to go and borrow an absolute heap of money to buy a property as an investment, unless you were one of those people born lucky or rich. And that to me was just, that kind of was grinding. I couldn't understand why you'd go off and borrow as much as 100 or 200 or even more, hundreds of thousands of euro from a bank to have an asset that needs to wash its own face, because debt is the enemy of long-term success, in my opinion. Now, I can't say I was born with that opinion. It eventually dawned on me through one of the hard-learned lessons of stock investing. But the nice thing about stock investing is you can start with a tenner. That's like incredible. You say to somebody, you can be an investor by just opening your wallet and forgoing something in that wallet in anticipation of a bigger reward in the future. Because that's what investing is. It's looking at something you've got, usually a pile of cash, and saying, I am not going to spend you today on a new bike or a holiday or a new electric guitar. I'm going to pretend you never existed. I'm going to invest you, and hopefully I'll change my situation in a few years as a result of the judgment I made today.
Yeah, and that's the that there's this common sense. You made it kind of, even back then, you brought a certain sense to it. It's interesting you were calling the bull sense, but you brought it to you brought a certain sensibility to something that was previously seen as, oh, not quite gambling, but that was the kind of, maybe day trading is seen as a thing, whereas this is fundamentally and totally different to that. What you stumbled across.
You're dead right. I mean, like day trading is high action, high stress, high tax, high commission. It's something, and I've met a lot of day traders over the years, most especially in the 2000s, and a lot of them would talk a good game, but none of them could prove it. So I remember once going to a seminar in Dublin with this highly successful day trader, alleged highly successful day trader. And I just asked him, look, no offense, but can you prove you got the results you said? Because if so, the method you've explained to us is a no-brainer. You just literally go home and do what you've told us. And there was a lot of yeah, but no, but, and that annoyed me a little, because I believe if you're going to, put yourself forward as an expert where people are actually going to make very real and meaningful decisions with their hard-earned cash, you should at least have, I suppose, the good grace to demonstrate that you prove that you have done it. When it comes to day trading, momentum trading, swing trading, I'd like to find somebody who has, let's say, a quarter of a century of a track history of success. Now, I'm not saying I'm any great shakes, but at least I have a quarter of a century of a track history of more or less doubling the S&P 500 returns every single year. And that is, so I have a letter that says it. That wasn't done by me, it's done by one of the big accounting firms. And I have at least now a business that I've participated in building and co-founded that has outperformed the S&P 500 sevenfold since its inception. And it will continue, because we, the business, and me personally, I've seen most or all market conditions. I've invested in 2 out of the 3 50% market drops, and another market drop may come. And if it does, no problem, I'm ready. Emotionally, I'm ready. And that's the thing. You need to actually follow somebody who has a proven track history, who can tell you to stay calm when the world is apparently crumbling, and that you buy into a strategy that you totally believe in. And in those other options that we spoke about, whether it's property or day trading, there's no there's no logic that holds in those different conditions.
Yeah, and interestingly, in a way, what I kind of really like about the approach of what you did back then and what you're doing now is that you always kind of gave the information away. In a way, you give the education away. You kind of, all the things and the traits that you see as being a really good investor, you kind of go, well, these are the traits that can make you into a good investor. These are the ways to find good companies. In a way, you've kind of, I don't know whether purposefully or that you've kind of demystified it. You could easily make it about that I have all this hidden secret information that I'm never going to share to anybody, and you pay me gazillions of money and created funds or whatever.
Yeah,
but I've always got that sense. Did you think that was something, that sharing thing was always there, or what do you think?
Oh, it was definitely, Frank. I mean, like the thing is, firstly, trust has to be earned. You can't just say, hey, trust me, here's my track history. I think trust is something, as human beings, we need to see, you trust somebody who repeatedly exhibits virtuous behaviors. And I'm a huge believer in education. I absolutely love it. And I think that the best educators of our lives are those who don't presume we come with knowledge already, will never take a condescending approach in how they explain. We've all had that experience in school or after school or in college where somebody spoke down to you because you didn't grasp a rudiment. It's not a nice feeling, and it's not fair, because we're all highly intelligent creatures in different ways. So when you go and explain something to someone in the same language as you'd use to a child, which is not doesn't strip out valuable detail. It just, when we explain something to children, we strip out the unnecessary detail, They grasp a core concept and then we add a little more detail. When you explain anything to somebody in that way, they appreciate it. They actually feel very thankful to you for that. And it was something that I suppose I just happened across. I hated when someone would speak down to me or presume I understood rudiments, and that wasn't very often the case. As I said, I studied physics. Physics was a hard grind. It was tough for me. I had no business studying physics. I can only admit now in the year 2021. But like, I should have studied something else. When I went and studied for a master's in strategy, I was in my element. I loved it. I've never been so happy in my education life as I was in 2006 when I went back to college to do that. And I suppose to my point, I gave away lots of free value because I think that it's a nice thing to do. And I'll always do that. I have never said no to somebody who's asked me for time to explain something, which means on average, I spend quite a bit of my week meeting individuals. I don't advise them what shares to buy, but I truly believe in the power of helping people. And I love that. I get so energized by it. And you're right, I did it from the earliest days. My Wall Street does it today, and about 3 million people have downloaded and consumed all of our Learn app. And that's no small feat, because that is as big as a book. Excuse me. That's a lot of content for 3 million people to consume in an app.
There's the financial world with a huge amount of, tremendous amount of information, T's and C's, all things that kind of confuse you, where your brain just goes, no, that's not for me. Now, there is another way of looking at that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put that to you, you know, there is another way of looking at that awful thing where you just go, no, I wouldn't be able, I just leave it in the bank because I just don't, it's too risky.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing about stock investing is it allows you to invest in your beliefs. And that's really important. Like when you take, if I may, just that guitar example again, where I spent my late teens grinding away at the guitar and trying to kind of achieve something. And then for a little while to make some money in college, I taught guitar. And the first thing of teaching music is you have to start a student on a song they like. There's no point in saying, I'm going to teach you this virtuosic piece by Andrei Segovia, or we're going to do something by Joe Satriani, or some, absolutely no point. You got to start with a tune you like, because then it will captivate something that's far more important than technicality. It will capture your heart. And that's the beauty of learning music. You teach someone a song they love and they are hooked because they hear they are creating something they already love. Now, if we transpose that onto stock investing, like your portfolio is a short little storyboard of your belief in the future when you're a mature investor. So what's wonderful about stock investing, and the reason that people get completely hooked on the subject, is that you can invest in whatever you believe the future is. If you believe the future of the world is cannabis, you can invest in about, hundreds of different ways you can invest in cannabis. You believe the future of the world is CRISPR, which is a technology used for editing genes. There are dozens of ways to invest in CRISPR. And so that continues. If you believe the future of the world is intergalactic travel, you can invest in that too. So like the wonderful thing is that you can buy what you believe in. And it's one of the 6 golden rules that in my Wall Street, we really emphasize, that don't buy something because someone else told you they like it. Buy something because it clicks. It just clicks in your mind. You're like, I absolutely believe in that. So when I spoke to you about Tesla all those years ago, I was like, I absolutely believe that loud rattling car out there burning diesel or petrol or gasoline, if you're in America, will ultimately become a quiet vehicle that's kinder to the environment. And I bought that because I believed in that vision of the future. And there's stocks I have in mind now that I believe are my vision of the future today. So that's the reason that stock investing separates itself from the other alternatives. Now, of course, you can buy what you believe in property. You could say, I believe in buying a retail property in the middle of Grafton Street, or I believe in, I should buy a shopping mall in the middle of Paris City, or whatever. Of course, you can do that. But I think you can go to a deeper level of belief through stock investing. You simply need to figure, how do I think this world is going to look in 10 years? 2 or 3 teams, and with as little money as you wish or as much as you wish, you can go and find a leader in those industries today. Because if they're the leader today, there's a fairly decent chance they'll be in one of the top 3 leaders in those industries in 10 years from now.
It's a lovely way to describe getting started. Find companies that you love, that you believe in, and that you feel will be there. And how then do you take the next step from, okay, I'm hearing what you're saying. What do I do?
Yeah. And in fact, so I think buying what you believe in is actually the 5th step. So I think the very first step is actually quite simple. It's deciding you're going to start. And that, you know, in that decision, you're going to overcome, sorry, there's my doorbell, the joys of working from home. But when you decide you're going to start, you're possibly going to overcome a lot of your personal background. You might have come from a home where stock investing was never discussed once. And I would think that for the vast, vast majority of our fellow country women and men, virtually no homes discuss stock investing. So deciding you're starting is actually a really important milestone in your life. And a bit like that first song, if you're first, I remember teaching the guitar in college, and the young man I was teaching guitar, he was only about 13 or 14. He wanted to learn Flying Without Wings by Westlife. I was appalled. I was like, are you, in my head, I was like, really? But I didn't let him know. I was like, that's a great tune. Now, he ended up a virtuoso of sorts. He was playing Led Zeppelin on stage 5 years later and got an A in his leaving cert in music, and I was tremendously proud of him. And but the fact is, he wanted to start with Flying Without Wings. I was like, I'm not going to stand in your way. So getting started is inordinately important, because there is a relationship that is fused in your mind with your first everything. With only a handful of exceptions, that first person you loved, that first album you bought, the first gig you went to, the first, you name it, it wasn't the first person you loved, the first gig you went to, the first album you bought didn't turn out to be the best for the most part, but at least you'll always remember it. So I have my dog on my feet, so sorry if you're picking up Bowie on the mic. Cool. Bowie here is just whimpering away. So yeah, so but that kind of, the first rule is deciding you're going to do it. And that is like, it's not a small decision. Like, I'm going to start running tomorrow, and then you're standing out in the cold with your runners on. And if you only run 1 kilometer and get home, you are now a runner. You've run. You have ran, and that I think is a very powerful relationship. So that's the first rule. The second, and this is the one, Frank, I know you've heard me say this before, is the importance of thinking long term, because the stock market in the short term is a casino. It's like a leaf in the wind, and we can't predict what the market is going to do in 2 hours from now, but we can with greater certainty predict what the market will do in 20 years from now. And that's bizarre. It's a bit like hitting a golf ball and having to wait maybe 5 hours for it to land. To see how it went. And so it forces you, the most successful investors are ones who have like Zen-like patience. They're almost Buddhist-like in their view. And you know, there's a great book called Your Money and Your Brain, written by Jason Zweig. And at this point I should gesture as if it's on this shelf, but as I've already given away the secret, that's full of guitar books and rock biographies. Oh my, well, I think that shelf there has some investment books. But anyway, Jason Zweig said in Your Money and Your Brain that biologically there's a part of one's brain, most usually a male brain, that needs a flutter, that needs that rush, that excitement that, for example, a horse running around a track delivers. That never has appealed to me, funnily. I never got involved in that. Fast feedback on an investment is something that is also known as a bet. If you need fast feedback, you're betting. So if you can understand it in your brain, there's this part of your mind that wants and enjoys the fast feedback, did they win or lose? Then you can partition it and go, I can satisfy that part of my brain maybe with it, you know, trips to the bookies or whatever. I don't even know, because I do so little of it. But if you decide this other part of my rational brain is going to create wealth for my family, it is inescapable that you have to think long-term. So when you buy shares in Tesla, that you go, I am going to keep those for my 2-year-old daughter and give them to her when she's 30. And that like forces you into a new mindset. And if you're fortunate to have a junior in your life, whether it's a godchild or a neighbor's kid or your own son or daughter, or if you're a guardian of young ones, it's really powerful to say, I'm investing for you. And when you're my age, I'm going to give you these shares, because you become a fund manager of sorts, which will force you into that long-term mindset. What will the world look like when you, my 3-year-old daughter, what will the world look like when you're walking up the aisle? And that has a really transformative effect on your thinking that I think is extremely powerful and will force you into the long-term mindset that ultimately results in success. So that's the second golden rule. I'm taking so long to explain them. First is get started. The second is think long-term. The third is never borrow money to buy. And I won't labor this one too much, Frank, but it is the path to ruination is paved with bad debt. Or, you know, your brokerage will lend you money to buy more shares. You'll still owe a fixed amount of money, irrespective of how your decisions play out. And if your broker doesn't like how it's going, which is known as buying on margins, they're going to look for their money back, and they don't ask your permission. They sell your shares, and that's pretty ugly. And I lost my shirt in around May 2000 with that. And so you never borrow money to buy. The fourth of 6 golden rules is diversify. So you might think, my vision of the future is flying cars, and I'm going to buy shares in flying cars. And it turns out that wasn't actually how the future played out. You need to diversify. You need to go, well, I believe in flying cars. I believe in electric vehicles and CRISPR therapeutics. And I believe in, and then if you kind of diversify, you've increased your chance of getting it right. I mean, it only takes one good investment to change your life. Like only one. Like you can put a small amount of money, like, hey, back to that Dell example. If you'd have bought 20 companies on the first day of 1990, $1,000 into each one, and sold none of them for 10 years, you'd be up $1.6 million minus 19 grand, whatever that is. Like, so if the other 19 had failed and you got Dell right, it only takes one to get it right. And yes. that's the reason we diversify, because we acknowledge that despite working on our best judgment and information today, not everything is going to work out as planned. The fifth golden rule is the one we spoke about at the top, which was buy what you believe in. Learn Flying Without Wings by Westlife, if that's what you're into. But you gotta, buy what you believe in, and fill your basket, your diversified basket, with businesses that describe your vision of a beautiful future. Because we will get there. And you will be right in some capacity. So you got to buy what you believe in, because it's incongruous to buy something you don't believe in. Like, why would you do that? And very often the financial, the wisdom on the wisdom, like you bow to knowledge. You go, well, this important and intelligent person over here told me I should buy shares in ABC. I don't really believe in it, but you know what? He's really good, so I'm going to buy it. I think one shouldn't do that. You must buy what you believe in. And then the final of 6 rules is you only invest what you can when you can. Like, we don't want to tear the house down, to miss the mortgage payments because you got so carried away. You don't need a lot of money to be a stock investor. You can put away as little as a tenner a month. I mean, I would urge people to do a little more. Even if your tenner a month grows 20-fold, it's 200. It's not exactly going to be life-changing, but you can put 50 away a month or 100 a month. And in the earliest days of my career, I automatically had cash taken away from my paycheck and go straight over to my US brokerage account month in, month out. So I had that set up automatically, which forced me to just do it on the side and have just what I could afford. And that was something that really the earliest investments you make for the first few years are quite ugly. They don't generally change your life, but also over the long term, they do. I wrote recently, Frank, that there was some poor sod who bought shares in Apple, and I think the year was 1987. And 16 years later sold them for a 40% loss or thereabouts. I have to check the figures. And in that lesson, there's quite a lot, which is that individual did have tenacity, but you got to really, really hold on, because if you've called something well, you have to give it the time for its entire thesis to play out. So they're the golden rules, Frank. I mean, it's get started, think long term, never borrow to buy, diversify, buy what you believe in, and invest what you can when you can. And if you just stick with those rules and just plug away at them as you go through your investing life, and not get sidetracked by news, which is a constant source of distraction, well, then you're set up for a pretty nice future.
Yeah, I love all of them, and I love the kind of honesty and simplicity of them all. And I'll say that you have two apps. One is a total free education, basically given everything that your 10,000 hours are compacted into that, and it's free. It's free.
Mm-hmm.
Is it still free? It's free.
Oh,
it's
yeah, it will be free forever.
Free forever. Wow.
Yeah.
And then and to get you started in a way that you've another app that is paid for, but I think it's free for a little while. Or
it is. Yeah, it is. That's our flagship product. So the first one you mentioned there, Frank's called Learn by My Wall Street. Mm-hmm. Has no hooks and no enter your email. It is kind of rubbish. You just download it and use it. And then our flagship product, which is called My Wall Street, 7-day free trial. You get to see, I have a very talented bunch of colleagues who basically look all day, every day at stock market. And we've shortlisted the thousands of listed businesses in the US to a list of about 120. And you get a 7-day free trial if you like what you see, after which you pay $99 a year. And for that $99, you get top end research. You get a stock of the month, which is on the first Monday of every month. My colleague Rory and his team picked the one we think you should buy right now and never sell. That's the thing that's outperforming the S&P 500 sevenfold on a time-weighted basis, I should add, without throwing too much jargon out. And you also can open a brokerage account, which is not on My Wall Street brokerage. It's the same broker that powers Revolut and Square. It's a broker called Drive Wealth, and it's done very beautifully. And 90% of the people who use My Wall Street's products and who are customer evangelists, 90% came through word of mouth marketing. So of the millions of people who we have, if you like, in our digital auditorium, they found us. They went looking for us. They found us, and we have earned their trust. We totally believe in earning trust. We're not biased by any sponsors. Our head isn't turned by some payment through the back door from a business. We just speak the truth all the time. And I think it cuts through to a product that I hope in the full passage of my life will prove to be the greatest investment product ever built.
Well, it sounds like now I'm being paid to say this, but obviously I'm saying this spontaneously, that I think there's nothing out there that quite empowers anybody like both the products. One in terms of an education, and also one in terms of the track record of the stocks recommended. I mean, I'd say as stocks recommended, and I'd say if you were to benchmark versus anything else that is out there, there's nothing quite like it. It is, yeah. I mean, you can make money from buying the product. Yeah. So that's an amazing testament to the product and to you. So I'm going to talk to you about two. I'm going to keep the big question of your Emmet Savage's recommendations, which you can choose to answer or not. We'll keep that one.
I will try. We'll try and pick one or two, but it won't be recommendations, Frank. I don't recommend. I simply
the ones that you're doing exactly. That's, no. That's enough. Yeah. But I'm going to talk to you, if I can at all, about. I'm going to talk to you about crypto, and I'm going to talk to you about this idea of a crash. And I know everything about what you talk about is away from that idea, or in other words, that it's built for crashes, because you're not in the business of day trading or the short term, it's the long term. Yeah. And in a way, any crash is an opportunity to buy more of those ones that you believe in, as opposed to anything else. But in saying that, it's interesting. I'm talking about crypto and crash together, because what I'm seeing at the moment is like nothing I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. I just think even there's this thing called Shiba Inu, which is come out of nowhere. It's a direct copy of another kind of a meme coin called Dogecoin.
Yeah.
And it's worth 10 billion. And the last time I looked at it today,
Yeah.
I thought, okay, what is going on? So
That's
what's your
right.
sense?
Yes, I am perplexed by it, I have to say. And I'm no crypto expert. And I spoke to a journalist about crypto day before yesterday, and I couldn't tell him enough. I'm not an expert, but he didn't care. He wanted to hear what I have to say, and I'm going to tell you now again. I'm no expert, but I'm going to give you my tuppence worth. I share your at least observation. There's like money. Retail, that's us, normal people on the streets, investment dollars are being pointed at crypto like a fire hose, because what's really happening is there's FOMO, fear of missing out. All of a sudden, you hear that you can buy a Tesla with a Bitcoin, and you can, pay for your electric guitar lessons with Bitcoin. And, as those things, most especially in America, it's not quite as visible here in Ireland, but in America, where you see your local retailers now accepting Bitcoin, it's impossible not to get this FOMO. Should I be taking some of my cash, traditional US dollars or euro, which is known as fiat currency, and putting it into crypto? Because I don't want to find someday that my savings have somehow been upended by this beast called cryptocurrency. And I'm like you, I'm watching in disbelief. And I have a son, and he has a Coinbase account in my name because he's not old enough to have one in his own name yet. And he's making, I'll call them brave decisions, but I know they're the same type of brave decisions I made in the dot-com bubble, which was, there was actually no bravery in it at all. I just saw everything was going up, and I read a little something on a stock and got caught up in the story. And that's happening again. Now, the question that's begging is there a bubble? Is it a house of cards, or is it a house of rock? I do not know. I think for me, crypto has really strong parallels to the internet, quote unquote, the internet in the mid-90s. Like in the mid-90s, when I was in college, the Google wasn't born, nor was Facebook. The giants of Amazon wasn't around, or if it was, I think they were born in probably late 90s. The internet was an ugly place. But the one thing that everybody acknowledged was, this thing is going to be huge. Now, if you ask someone why, what's going to happen, it was kind of, yeah, but it's got the internet, and you dial up, you get a modem. You weren't getting clear answers, but there was a general acknowledged feeling going that the future was the internet, which proved to be correct. Now, I think today, if we bring that lesson forward, I don't know if it's directly the same, but I do believe crypto is going to be huge. But I don't know if the Google, Amazon, and Facebooks of crypto have even been born yet. I just don't know. Like, you'll know it when you see it almost. Now, the market, you could say, has spoken, and that everyone has pointed at Bitcoin and went, that, we'll take that. You can drive out of here with a Tesla Model X if you give me 1 Bitcoin, or whatever the rate is. And that suddenly validates it. But is Bitcoin the Amazon, if you like, of the cryptocurrency world? I have no idea. I have a lot of very well-read friends in the area. Some have made a lot of money, and they've explained. I even had one friend of mine who's a customer of my Wall Street, who actually did this wonderful mind map to explain to me how critically important Ethereum is. And as he was explaining to me, I understood it. And when the call was over, I kind of forgot it. I can't remember why I was so impressed. It's the backbone of the everything. I know people have made untold wealth in no time in crypto. If they were to sell now, I know one individual who's made 50 million euro if he was to sell all his holdings now. I mean, it didn't come from huge wealth. In my books, that's huge wealth now. And I just don't know. I actually, Frank, I do not know, but I'm probably curious.
I talk to you about, say, a company like iRobot or Tesla? I'd give you loads of concrete reasons why I love those companies. And it'd be my own kind of feelings towards the companies. if I'm talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum, I'm probably repeating other people's enthusiasm for the
Yes.
technology. And now, is that my brain capacity, or is it just I'm not kind of feeling it?
It's funny. So it's back to that kind of that tired Dell example that I've overused. At least with the passage of time, I could look and can look at Dell or Netflix, for example, and in its early days and go, yeah, the things that Dell had, Netflix had, Tesla had, and so I can take those learnings and apply them to the world we're in today. That hasn't quite happened with cryptocurrency. And you're right. Last night, my son was reading out to me the different new cryptos available on Coinbase and their angles. And honestly, it was like rattling around an empty cage in my head. There was nothing, nothing I could refer to. I could throw out a few canned responses, but I really, but I'm not suffering from FOMO either. I lament not buying Bitcoin when a good friend of mine 7 years ago absolutely emphatically told me it's the best thing and most important thing I could ever do, and even told me how to mine them. But did I? No, because it didn't click. So I'm the granddad. I'm the granddad of the crypto world insofar as like I don't know what those kids are doing, and I wish I did. I really do. And I know the experts in it, and I think I've had a reasonable stab at grasping what's happening behind the scenes and how a coin is mined and the true value it's being created. But really, where it's going in the future, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. One of my colleagues sent me a graph of the great bubbles of the world and included in history from the last 400 years. And it had all the usual suspects in there, like tulips and all that kind of stuff. And the crypto was, the vertical curve straight up. But as I said to my colleague, it hasn't played out to be a bubble. A bubble is, we see the downside as well. It's had a hell of a run, but I really do wish I knew which crypto is the Amazon, which one is the Google, or even if they're out there. Sure, don't we all? It's just my crystal ball doesn't extend into the crypto space.
I remember years ago, and I'd go onto your Twitter account. This is a kind of confessional, but and you used to say, "Don't be copying these now. Make your own decisions." Rah, 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 rah. But I'd have this logic in my brain going, "Well, I know how much time the man's put into these here. So he can tell me not to copy them, but I'm going to take them hugely on board." The big question that I'm asking you is, if today you're starting an investment account, Emmet, and I'm going to take you back to your days way back. What did you do? 3 stocks? What was your 3 stocks that you'd buy?
Yeah, so well remembered, Frank. So when I ran a course, an in-person course in the hotels around Dublin back in 2007, 2006, 2007, the one question I was always asked at the end was, okay, great, lovely. Now I understand it. I know what a share is. I know what a broker is. I know what an exchange is. I know the attributes of Dell in the first day of 1990. What are you buying? And at that time, and even on this time, I can't look one person in the eye and say, Frank McCaughey, you should buy Acme bricks. You should buy them. I can't do that. Legally, I'm not allowed to do that. But what I am allowed to do legally, and always have been, as is anyone else's, blog what I'm doing myself. It's simply an expression. I've decided to forsake privacy, this tightly held thing that's very cultural in Ireland. So I started a Twitter account, as you know, Frank, many, many years ago to answer that question, which was, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. On the first day of every month for a good few years, I just said the 3 stocks I like the most. And that's played forward now into my Wall Street, and starting actually this week in the Horizon product, I am documenting the 3 I like the most, and every month I'm going to buy with my family's money the one I like the most, and that's with a product called Horizon, which we didn't discuss. But to your question, so you mentioned iRobot earlier as a business you like. I mean, iRobot is like, for those who don't know, they make these tiny little flying saucer robots who walk around your floor cleaning it. They are autonomous vacuum cleaners, and they're autonomous mops, and soon to be autonomous lawnmowers. So they kind of take the drudgery out of combing the floor, you see. So iRobot,
keeping couples together for centuries, well, for decades. That should be a tagline.
entirely it is. But iRobot it's absurdly cheap. Now we've just discussed the value and how do you value a cryptocurrency, and I think we concluded we're not sure. But look, you look at a business like iRobot, which is profitable every year. It generates new money out of thin air. It makes a profit. It is trading right now at 1.5 times revenue, which means that it basically every year and a half takes more cash, or the same amount of cash, into the register, the theoretical register, than the entire business is worth. And that is, like, to me, is mind-blowing. It is such a cheap asset. It's profitable. It's established. It is unquestionably future relevant. The worry that the world has, oh, it's a commodity, it's a white goods, or whatever it is. But basically, iRobot recently reported something like 60% revenue growth. And we're looking at a business. So that is valued at a couple of billion, profitable, future relevant, passionate founding CEO whose name is Colin Angle. This business has the attributes that Dell had on the first day of 1990. Now, so you think about home computers ended up a commodity, but a commodity that everybody absolutely needed. Now, does everyone need an iRobot? No, not really. Are there other products, as there were with Dell? Yes, there's substitute products, Me Too, cheaper knockoffs, but these guys are the ones in the lead with highly innovative product. But it's not the stock I'd start with. I'm only going there because you mentioned it, and I just wanted to come in and say I love it too. And I do think for the very long-term investor, that's like my vision is iRobot someday will be bought out by Apple. You know, they have the eye, everything else. And I think home robotics is, of course, an area that needs to go through a renaissance. But if I was starting, there's a good few, but I'll go with one that everyone knows, everyone can in some way relate to, and it has entirely in full complement the attributes of the greatest brands of our lives in their early days. Now, the business, before I unveil it, isn't in its earliest day because it's circa 90 billion in size, maybe 100 billion, and it's Airbnb. And Airbnb are a fundamental disruptor of an industry. So they're the early adopters who are happy to crash on a couch. And then there was those kind of early majority who were, you know, sleeping in a designated bedroom in somebody's house. But Airbnb is now a marketplace in virtually every country in the world for people to go and stay in beautiful homes, in budget homes, in tree houses, in camper vans, and whatever it is they so wish to sleep in. And then also have experiences in local communities, whether it's foraging for mushrooms with a pig in a forest, or climbing a tall mountain, or walking alpacas around the mountains of Kerry. Like, Airbnb is a marketplace for life experiences. Brian Chesky and his two other co-founders, Joe Gebbia and Nate something or another, I can never get Nate's surname, they exhibit in spades the attributes that you see in Elon Musk. Like, they don't need the money anymore. Elon Musk, Brian Chesky, and Michael Dell in 1990, they weren't doing it for money anymore. They were doing it because this was their baby. This had a higher purpose in their life. And I think Airbnb today is a wonderful example of a branded giant business that will outsurvive us. I think it's going to be around in 30, 40, 50, and 100 years. I think it is going to be a wonderful investment. Is it going to grow like Dogecoin? Not a chance. Is it going to, well, not a chance in the same time frame, but very much a chance when you elongate that time. Other businesses that I believe will, with the passage of time, augment individuals' wealth are Teladoc, which offers over the computer and iPad and phone consultations with consultants and GPs and specialists for every matter of medical issue. And I think if coronavirus, you know, brought home to all of us, nobody wants to be in a doctor's waiting room, and Teladoc have an incredible suite of products and businesses that keep you at home. There's very few doctor consultations where that doctor must actually lay their hands on you. They can, usually a doctor will diagnose by looking and listening, I mean, sure, there's the stethoscope, sure, there's a swab, and that's a different story. But Teladoc is a business that's going to, that has already disrupted the way people go and see doctors, and I think is going to become a far greater part of our future. I mean, its numbers are simply staggering, but when I say its numbers, it's financials. And then Etsy, a marketplace for buying creative stuff, you know, beautifully handmade products. You know, there's this kind of debate that rages about who can ever take down Amazon or who can ever compete with Amazon. But local, bespoke, handmade, crafted products, they belong on Etsy. Amazon will deliver, you know, the stuff we buy on Amazon, the books and the dog food or whatever it is you so choose. But Etsy do something. But Etsy's financials are just face melting. They're unbelievably good. Now, they might find there's a little dip in the next year. I don't know. I mean, I don't have a short-term crystal ball, but I do for the long term. I never told you about that. So I like Etsy, and then there's plenty more. I mean, there's and I spoke earlier about my vision of the future, or everyone's stock portfolio should be a representation of where they believe the world is going. And there's a technology called CRISPR, which Netflix have a documentary about at the moment called Human Nature, I think it is, and it's about the invention of a technology that is just beyond belief. It's like beyond space age, where human or any living creature, whether it's an animal or plant, whether their genes can be edited to change, I can't even say the word, to augment their health or even possibly how they look. So there was a case a couple of years ago where a Chinese scientist, young scientist, got so enthralled by the possibilities of CRISPR, CRISPR as a technology, that he edited twins while they were still embryos to remove the genetic possibility of them ever acquiring AIDS. And in doing that, the guy didn't gently step over perceived lines of ethics. He rode a motorbike through it. Like, he completely smashed through this ethical lines, and he's in prison. Like, he went to jail. But what happened was two children were born who cannot contract the AIDS virus, and it was proven. But it was a big no-no. I'm not advocating that any human should tinker with an embryo, because effectively you aren't just changing their genetic line, you're changing an entire generation below them's genetic line. But CRISPR is going to cure illnesses that to this point in humanity's evolution had a sticker on them, which is uncurable. And it is going to, there are times you see investment. There's a very hard thing to quantify, Frank, and it's goosebumps. But occasionally in life, you see a product, a technology, a movement that gives you goosebumps. And you're like, really? Like, I mean, CRISPR is de-extincting species. The first one, which will be hatched in the year 2022, is the North American, not the carrier pigeon, but a pigeon that was deemed extinct and was very important part of the forests of North America, and it is being de-extincted as a result of CRISPR. It is mind-blowing. So we need, as a human race, to use that technology in a way that revives what we destroyed on this planet and takes suffering out of human and animal lives. And I love that. I just love that. I love to think that someday a child who is born, with sickle cell anemia or with some genetic problem that requires them, that up until this point means they have a miserable life, that they're cured. I love that. I absolutely love that. ALS, the Ice Bucket Challenge, one of the two inventors of CRISPR, and they both got the Nobel Prize in Chemistry last year. They are two ladies. One is called Jennifer Doudna and the other is called Emmanuelle Charpentier. They both got the Nobel Prize. And Jennifer Doudna's startup, which you cannot buy shares in, is partnering with, I think it's Biogen, and they are, I believe, well advanced in curing ALS, the Ice Bucket Challenge, this horrible illness that has taken far too many people far too soon. Wouldn't it be just wonderful to know that that one illness, just that one pocket of misery is gone as a result of this technology called CRISPR. Well, that's just a thin end of the wedge, because CRISPR's possibilities is for a future we can't even envisage right now.
So much outpouring there, so much information. It's phenomenal. Like.
And the stock, by the way, so, and sorry, Frank, to your point, so there's a whole pile of companies in the CRISPR space that have floated. Some are tinkering around with pharmaceuticals already to a fairly good effect. And there are others that are thoroughbreds. Editas is one, CRISPR Therapeutics is the name of the company, is another. And there's quite a few of them. But again, so to your very first question, I think a portfolio of businesses for someone worth, let's say, an easy to understand business like Etsy, you go, oh, yeah, it's Amazon for homemade products, or it's quite scientifically complex like CRISPR, but you can build a nice folio of these businesses and you go, yeah, that, I think the year 2031 is going to look like those ones, plus some others that haven't been born yet. And that's what makes stock investing a wonderful pursuit, because it keeps you intellectually stimulated, interested, and every single day you learn. Every single day. If you dedicate your life to investing, you will find you are learning about industries you didn't even know existed. And I could give you loads of examples.
Emmet Savage, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Pleasure, Frank. See you soon.